The thing is that thought can be also just as powerful a tool as my hand can be. So if I know I want something to happen, I just do it. So this other element of, or this other faculty that we have, which is our thought, uh, can actually work in the same way. So when I have this intention that I want to do this, I can use my thoughts to actually manifest it. But what kind of thoughts is required? So if I have to pick up a table, I need to make sure that I have good, my forearms are strong enough to be able to do it. I also need to make sure my feet are steady. So when I lift that table, I'm able to move with it. So obviously there's certain preparations that we need to make to have the strength to do that. So in terms of spiritually, if I want to become so strong that whatever my thoughts are, I can will it, I can make it do what it wants me to, what my intentions are. So for that kind of connection, what is required is a very clear line of connection. So pure thoughts and elevated thoughts are the two ingredients that are required. Now, first of all, to even hold pure thoughts, the vessel that's required, there's a very beautiful line that I thought was quite amazing. They say that a lioness has a very rich milk. So they say that to hold such rich milk, you need a golden vessel. And to think about the kind of mind or intellect we need to have within ourselves as spiritual beings, so that the thoughts that we then create can actually be contained in those containers of our thought and our understanding. And to create those kind of vessels within our being, there's a few things that are like not a prerequisite, but it's a supporting factor. So the first is my relationship with myself, that I have a clear awareness of myself to be the spiritual being. I I must be very aware that I don't get hijacked by the acquired of the material, whether it's like in the meditation, my name, my gender, what I do, all of these things have to be something I'm aware that they are tools that I use, but they are not me. So the first level of purity that is required in terms of the awareness of how I see myself, there should be that very clear awareness of who I truly am. And then the second level of consciousness is that in level of purity is that I also see the next person when I'm interacting with them, to also see them as a being of energy. So I don't get distracted by what people do, what people wear, what they look like. I can always hold the bigger vision, because as human beings, when we lose self-confidence, we start doing external things to gain the agreement or the buy-in of others. So we start doing things that pleases other people, and that can really dilute our power, because then we actually moving into a dimension of not being real. And we know that that which is true and real actually has strength. So really to make sure that I don't let myself become weak and influenced by others. And so to always look at them not in the external, but from with the eye of insight, that I know that each one is a spiritual being. And the nature of that spiritual being is just the way I see myself. I see myself as a being of peace and love and happiness and joy and wisdom and power. So I hold that elevated awareness of myself, and then I see others as that. So that two initial practices, just that purity of my vision for myself and others starts to create a mind and an intellect that is starting to get cleansed. And so I then start having the habit of starting to look at the good in everyone, that which is authentic, and not get hijacked by the limited. But when it comes to the elevated consciousness, that higher state of consciousness, I then actually move beyond everything that is what I see with my eyes. Um, I begin to explore the higher consciousness of constancy, of perfection, of that which is beyond logic, beyond duality. And when we start working with that level of consciousness, this is actually really the beginning of the magic, because it surpasses the logic, etc. And that's when we can really bring our vision towards that divine being. And the very word divine tells us it's really out of this world. And in that state of consciousness, when I see myself as a being and connect with that divine source of truth and peace and love and happiness, what's happening is that I've lifted my consciousness. I don't move anywhere, but I just lift my consciousness. And in science, they have a very interesting process. They call it osmosis. And this process of osmosis is very interesting, that when two things are next to each other, they're two separate entities, but they're next to each other, they're touching each other. Then if one has a higher concentration of something and the other one has a lower concentration of the same thing, what will happen is that the two will equalize. The higher concentration will move towards the lower concentration till they become equal. And that's called osmosis. And so for me, I feel that when I come into my original state of being a soul, and then I am able to bring myself next to the divine. So that's where the connection is happening. And when that's happening, it doesn't matter where I'm at in terms of my state of consciousness. But the fact that I'm already in that awareness of being a soul, I might not be completely on the highest frequency of that awareness, but I am in that awareness of being a soul. And I'm aware that I'm not the body. Then this very high consciousness that the Supreme, because remember, the Supreme has never come into a physical body and born through a mother's womb to go through this process of duality. The Supreme doesn't know of good and bad and happiness and sadness. The words that we will use for the Supreme Consciousness is ever, constant, stable, unlimited. So those qualities of peace, purity, love, happiness, joy, wisdom, and power, they're constant in this source. So that soul will be constantly emanating these vibrations. So it'll be at a much higher concentration than mine's. Because I might think and then I might let go of the energy and then I'll think again. And so this stopping and start actually reduces my power. But by just thinking about and becoming aware of myself as a soul, I'm able to bring myself next to the Supreme Consciousness or the divine. And so that higher concentration then finds its way gently going over onto my side. And that is then, in a way, equalizing my energy to that of the divine. So for that moment of being close to the divine, I can almost resonate with the same frequency of the divine to the level that I maintain that awareness. Now, this is really very beautiful because I don't become the divine, but I can feel as powerful and constant as the divine. And when I'm able to bring myself to that feeling, that level of, like fullness, then with that consciousness, when I begin to act through my body, it's almost like I give life to the qualities that are inside of me. And then those qualities begin to work through the things I do. So it's like I'm now vibrating through the words I'm speaking, through the glance I give through my eyes, how I listen, what I touch, what I do. I'm actually animating the qualities of peace and love through my really physical senses. And that's really something that's very beautiful, because it's well and good knowing about peace and knowing about love, but to be able to take that vibration and animate it into action, into what we do, what we think, what we touch, what we create, to bring that vibration into action. Now that's like giving life to peace, purity, love, happiness, joy, wisdom, and power. And so it's really beautiful for us to be aware that we have this kind of potential, that we can very naturally, by staying in that awareness of myself as a soul, and then I naturally come into the, like, become next to the Supreme, and that transferring of energy that is allowed me to rekindle my qualities. And then they become something that I can express. So when we speak about the link of life, it really means that this dormant soul that has peace, love, and happiness, when it actually is in a physical body, but is able to maintain consciousness of being soul, it is able to draw the power of the divine into action. And it's really beautiful in a sense that, uh, you know, most people will say, oh, you believe in a God. How do you see the God? Where is this God? But that divinity of the divine is not going to be manifested by a ray of light and a lightning and a thunderbolt or anything, but it actually manifests itself in the things that we do, the little deeds and acts that we perform with that right consciousness. And that's where the magic comes in. So for me, it's something really beautiful, because it kind of makes you realize that we are more. We just because we in physical bodies, sometimes the body will get tired. There could be an ailment. There could be many different things. But even with those ailments, when I'm connecting with the divine, I can surpass the pain. I can free myself from the discomfort. There's so many amazing things to how that energy just becomes an additive to give me the strength not to be a victim of circumstances and situation, but it really allows me to rise above. But the beauty is that I feel happy, but then I also create this lovely energy around me as well, giving others that experience. So I don't know why I feel like I want to bring Sister Devendra in at this point. Before I was thinking, Sister Devendra, do you have any thought?
Thank you. And I really like this concept that you're bringing up of animating the beautiful qualities that are inside of us, and in a way that connection with the Supreme being manifested in life through each of us in a unique way through the expression that we sort of give to the qualities. But my question is, you might have experienced this, and I think the rest of the group that is keeping our company would have experienced this also. In life, it's very much three elements always at play. It's I, the individual, it's my connection with God, the Supreme, but it's also the context in which I'm operating in. And within that context, I see two big things. One is whatever task and activity I'm involved in, but also together with that, it's the dynamics of the interactions that I have to engage in. whilst I'm fulfilling whichever task or activity. And it's this third aspect, the context, which I feel sometimes causes for me to lose sight of that connection. And very easily, I feel anyone can actually slip into ordinary expression, and so then this beautiful potential for the animation somehow just falls by the wayside. And I feel what takes over is old patterns, patterns that have become deeply established internally because of repetition, which are sometimes so contradictory to, how that you were speaking about that peace and that love can actually flow through me and shine out in everything that I do. And even ordinary things can actually become so special and so magical. So I want to know from you, because of your experience and your wisdom, like what do you do to sort of put safety measures in place within yourself to prevent yourself from sort of slipping into those old patterns when the context you're operating in just sometimes becomes overwhelming, and to keep that connection going so that this animation is always manifested?
It's really funny how you're asking such a question, because yesterday I had a very clear, because when you have that experience, if you slip out of it, you can catch yourself so quickly and you actually watch yourself. And so it's been so nice in a sense that yesterday something happened and I could see, at least I didn't do anything, but I could see, oops, this is something that could really, be a thing. And then this morning when I woke up early in the morning, and this is why I like the early morning so much, because obviously that point which I noted, it must have registered on my subconscious. Now, remember last week when we spoke about the diary, and I was inviting people that as soon as you wake up, the first thing is you ask yourself, how do you feel? And whatever the subconscious was actually storing or whatever, you'll be able to know. And so this morning, without even taking pen to paper, as I was, before I got up, it was quite early. So I thought, let me just rest in the bed a bit. And so, but then I was listening to what I was feeling. And it's so amazing that that subconscious thing just said to me, when you don't rest enough, when you don't hold a balance, then you're not going to have enough energy to hold it. So when I started off, I said, you need to have a golden vessel to hold the milk of the lioness. So we will really be disfavoring ourselves when practically we don't look after even our physical body. Like we get tired, when we at our nerves end in a sense, because we've pushed ourselves so much. Even spirituality can't work. I feel it's like we're trying to kind of force something that doesn't happen. We can't break any laws. As much as there's a very beautiful, powerful spiritual law that we're speaking about, and that when you have a toothache, if you remember God, you can actually stop connecting to the pain and you can go above it. But the pain exists and I have to deal with it. So in the same way, this physical body needs the right kind of rest and it needs all of that. And if we're not attentive to those things, we'll find ourselves becoming short-circuited. And so we have the good intention, but we can't hold that power. So the divine intellect is having the understanding to catch ourselves and to direct ourselves. But it's also a divinity to find balance in our lives. So I feel it's a practical, and I know in the past, I never had this. I was too involved in getting things done practically and, my list of the to-do list from one to the next to the other. And I never put in my list time to rest sufficiently, care for myself sufficiently. And I feel that that's something I've added to my life. Before I thought I was just like, don't care and whatever it is, but it wasn't. I know that what is the most important for me is my connections with people, and I do value them the most. But if really I have pushed myself to the limit where I can't think straight, how am I going to be emanating peace, love, and happiness? The instrument is already too cranky, and so I won't be able to, even though the intention is good and the throat is choking, guess what, it's not going to be a smooth outflow. So I feel that that was the one thing that for me specifically, that I didn't have a good balance of taking care of the physical instrument of the body, right? Then the other thing is, obviously, if we're writing constantly and we're doing our diaries, what's going to happen is that I'm going to be more in tune to my subconscious. So that means I'm listening to myself more as well. And that's going to be a little bit of a guarding factor as well. And then the other thing that I find is also important is that if we still hold a little bit expectations of people, because as we're moving towards our own excellence, we can also want other people to be moving on the same level. And that's just an expectation. Whatever we do in our lives, it's for us. It's not that we are doing it so that other people can follow us. And I think that's something we must get out of, because then what we feel is that, oh, I've moved. Why is other people not coming to that level? And a simple thing like expectation can create so much of frustration and make us slip. So maybe there's lots more things, but I mean, what's coming onto my mind are those few things. Okay.
Thank you. And just as those are very practical and useful pointers, but just as you were speaking, I actually realized that this animation of the divine qualities that you were speaking about, actually, first, I owe it to myself. So, you were speaking about rest and balance. It's actually peace towards the self and love for the self. And just as you were speaking, it became so clear that in my connection with the source, I'm the first recipient, actually. So those qualities initially have to actually be animated on a very personal level. And secondly, then it is in terms of my expression and how I utilize it in my engagement with the world out there. That's fantastic.
One of the things is that sometimes when we're on a spiritual path, we think we're here to serve and help others. I actually think we mustn't even think about what we must do for other people, because what is inside of me, when it overflows, people can take what they want. So I'm not here to give anyone peace and anyone love, because I'm not really, that's not my business in a way. But what's my responsibility is to be peaceful and loving, exactly what you're saying. Then the result, because if I'm that star of peace and love and I'm radiating peace and love, it's going to shine in other people's lives, and then they can take it if they want to, so that my spirituality doesn't become an imposition on anyone as well, which I think is the most non-violent thing, because you can become spiritual and become really aggressive and you want others to be peaceful. And it just doesn't work like that. So anyway, I think I think it's nice to be honest about these things, because sometimes I think you can become so overboard, on a mission. The only mission we have is to look after the self.
A peace warrior.
Yes, you can become a missionary, a peace warrior. You can do, we always want to be fighting for a cause, so those kind of things give people purpose. But the whole idea of being is that there's no more a cause. It's just about being. And it's really so lovely, because it does give us in a sense, this kind of energy is very sustaining. It's a long term. If you think you're giving to people, at some point, what am I receiving? But when I'm just being, I'm receiving as well. So then there's no return as well. But I think instead of doing a meditation, perhaps we could use the song as our point of meditation and just hold that beautiful energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, there's a question in the chat box. I think before we play the song, it says, we are all connected to the one consciousness. So if I am not treating the self well, it will contribute to others feeling that way too. So loving the self is also service to others. Yes, thank you. That's exactly it.
Put your hand on your heart and put your hand on your heart and say I love you and close your eyes. Feel your breath beneath that beautiful heart in your chest, and look inside of your soul. There is a love coming to life. I see your love as one love. I feel the joyfulness of bliss in this. And can you see your waterfall? And your heart is leading to it all. Your stream, how it flows, it glistens as it goes. And shine your light, and shine your heart. Shine your light and shine your heart. You are a radiant starlight, and raise your light and put your hand on your beautiful heart and put your hand on your beautiful heart and say I love you. I love you. And close your eyes, feel your breath beneath that beautiful heart. Yes, there's a beautiful heart in your chest.
So thank you. I was just thinking one last thing is that, when I feel a little bit on the depleted side as well, it's nice to just rest in that very powerful form of the source. And so it's always important for me to make sure that I make regular time intervals, not to wait till that whole depletion happens, but have a timetable during the day to just go and touch base and come back, touch base and come back. And, it's like sit-ups. The one thing I've learned is that if you can sit right down and then wake up without holding anything, you really strengthen your core. And for all of us to know that the core is what supports everything. So for me, even being here, doing some things, and then lifting my consciousness above the body and being that light connecting to the source, feeling that, touching the source and coming back and do this, perhaps what we call sit up with our mind, will also be a very beautiful way to strengthen our core. So those are just like practical things. And you might want to also experiment a little bit with your own self in watching yourself, because the thing I find is that when we look at the world for our answers, then we begin to copy and we do things. But I feel each one of us has always had this amazing link with the divine. We all have a personal relationship with the divine. And so when we become quiet and we still become still, we remember, we recall how it was for us to be with the divine. And so we don't actually have to recreate anything. It's almost we can really go back to, I mean, I don't like to use the word go back to, but have rekindled that sort of power that existed between me and the divine. Anyway, Sister Devendri, any closing remarks?
No, thank you. Just want to wish everyone well for the day and the weekend.
Yes. And so I want to add this group is a group that kind of is with us until the 18th of January. So we're starting a special silence from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And so what will be beautiful is use this time to be more and more silent and still and tap into the silence that's happening globally. All the centers around the world are going to have 3 days of silence from the 16th, 17th, and 18th. And I'm quite sure if you tap into that force of silence, you'll also have beautiful experiences. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.